Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he tries his best not to get involved in the Time War and arrive at episode 529. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How's it going, guys?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Can't complain.
I also cannot complain.
Did you guys do anything this week?
We watched Uncharted. Now that it's on Netflix.
What'd you think?
What is that?
It's the Tom Holland, Mark
yes.
Wahlberg based off the video game.
Gotcha.
I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And as someone who played the video games, I thought they did a good job capturing the essence of the story, even if they make some tweaks and modifications. And it's kind of set up as an origin story of how these two characters meet. But I thought the characterizations were pretty spot on. And overall, the tone and feel of it felt like the video games. And there were great, awesome action elements and some stuff that were a little bit ridiculous. And, definitely worth watching. I kind of expected to be disappointed by it just because the video games are so good, but I wasn't. So I would definitely watch another one.
How about you, Sean?
Well, we finished watching Sandman on Netflix, which is phenomenal. Have you all watched?
Nope.
Highly, highly, highly recommended. The little bonus episode they kind of threw on at the end is not required watching to enjoy the rest of the season. It's barely, other than featuring characters that, have come before, it's barely related at all. But there is a nifty little Doctor Who Easter egg in that you get not one, not two, not three, but 4 Whovian alumni in one episode. The last one has David Tennant and Georgia Moffat and Arthur Darvill.
Oh.
And Derek Jacobi.
Oh. And Michael Sheen, so 5.
And Michael Sheen. There's 5 of them. I forgot Michael Sheen was in the show. So, yeah.
Well, his voice.
His voice, anyway. We also finished watching Halo, which it's not bad. It's kind of an interesting first season. It diverges quite a bit from the story arc that's set forth in the games. And when it's Halo, it's pretty good. When they shoehorn some other stuff in that really isn't necessary other than to kind of pad out the episode count, it dragged on kind of ridiculously. But now that hopefully that story arc is relatively wrapped up, and if they move forward with the season 2, which I believe they are, I think it'll feel more like Halo going forward. And of course, we watched Hocus Pocus 2.
How is it?
It is just a delightful little dose of, yes, we've got our finger on the nostalgia button, and it's not as good as the first one. I'll say that, but you know what? I don't care. I found things to laugh at. I just delighted in the fact that the Sanderson sisters were back, and they do some interesting things with their new cast, and they call back to a lot of jokes, and of course there's song and dance numbers, and yeah, just everything that I kind of wanted out of a sequel. Glenn, what did you do this week?
Absolutely nothing. I didn't watch anything. I didn't do anything. I did finish reading the Spider-Verse comic book story arc. A few months back, I bought the collected edition and just finished it up. It's pretty good. It's pretty exciting. There's a lot of interesting little things that they do with it, and it has pretty much every Spider-Man you can imagine, even the Spider-Man from the Hostess commercials that were the one-page commercials in the back of the ads in the back of the comics. But it was really, it was neat. Yeah, it was neat. It was really fun. They include, and it's kind of cool because they do a splash page of, it's just a one-page story, and it involves that particular Spider-Man. Now, they don't go as far to call the fruit pies and stuff hostess, but it goes far enough to imply that that's what they're talking about. And then there was another splash page that was actually, it was it was 4 panels, or 4 sets of panels, I should say, in black and white. And this was meant to be the Spider-Man from the newspaper strips. And the antagonists in this, each time that it goes through 4 strips and advances the story, the first strip of the next, or the first panel of the next strip, will sort of recap in a weird narrative way what has been happening. And so the antagonist is quite confused at what's happening because he doesn't know why Peter Parker keeps kind of rehashing what was just done in the previous panel from the previous panel from the last strip. And so he gets very confused, and then he realizes that in this particular universe, that's how the mechanics work in this particular universe. So it's really cool. It was an ambitious story, and it's got, if you look at Into the Into the Spider-Verse, it has glimpses of what this did on a larger scale. It's kind of nice that, Spider-Verse is a little more contained and a little more focused, but it was neat. That's about all I did, though. I didn't really watch anything. We're still keeping up on She-Hulk.
You were invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
All right, well, why don't we move on to our reviews?
The Eighth Doctor, Time War, Volume 1.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. The Eighth Doctor, The Time War, Volume 1.
Welcome aboard the space cruiser Theseus.
We're on a cruise liner.
But there's no glass. That's space out there.
Please have your tickets and boarding passes ready.
Why aren't we dead?
Because I doubt they would sell many tickets for the cruise if it killed people.
Sensors indicate the enemy TARDIS we have pursued. Destroy it! I obey!
This feels different somehow.
Doctor, we're on holiday, remember?
Ripples are becoming waves crashing onto the shore.
Meaning?
That something wicked this way comes.
Big Finish. We love stories.
A terrible war is being waged through space and time as two powerful enemies rip the cosmos apart in a final struggle to the death. The Doctor stands apart from this conflict. He is not a warrior, but a healer. But the Time War is snapping at his heels, and soon he will have no choice but to turn and face its horrors.
Were you going to break down the individual stories or just do the one for the entire box set?
We sort of talked about it ahead of time, and I think we're just going to do. No, it's okay. It's before you got to the meeting, but we kind of decided that it all really kind of is one cohesive story together with all 4 parts. So we decided we were just going to do the one summary.
Well, it gets a kind of middle of the road bump because it had some ups that I really liked and some downs.
I guess that is true. It is a bit unfair that if you had ones that were better than others, it does kind of shoehorn you into bumming the whole thing or not, so
the synopses aren't too long. I could do it for each one.
Yeah, go ahead.
The starship Theseus. The Doctor and his companion Sheena land the TARDIS on the glamorous luxury space liner Theseus just as it's about to leave to Jupiter's spaceport. An opportunity for a holiday presents itself, and it's one they're glad to take. But a disturbance catches their attention. They realize sinister events are taking place on board. Passengers are vanishing, and unless they're careful, they may be next. Can the Doctor and Emma solve the mystery, or is there something else they should be worrying about?
Bum, bum, bum.
Glenn does not agree.
Yeah, I think that the problem that I have with this particular story is I was admittedly very confused at what was going on, and Keith and I talked a little bit about this before the show, but I was first of all very confused as far as companion goes as they were as they were kind of trickling through the different girls, and we finally do land on Bliss. But I think my biggest problem with this is the setup was such an intriguing story that I kind of wanted that. I kind of wanted to stay with the ocean liner that's basically sacrificing people in order to make these jumps. I kind of wanted more of that focused mystery, and it kind of diverges from that. It still utilizes some of those elements because it is the trolls, basically, for lack of a better word, that they end up utilizing later on. But that was my problem. Is it went a completely, and it's probably unfair, but it went a completely different direction than I sort of felt like it was going.
See, I liked some of those aspects. My biggest complaint with it probably was the idea of these trolls under a hyperspace bridge.
Yeah.
I know we haven't gotten a lot of hyperspace in Doctor Who, so I don't really understand the mechanics of it as well as I do like in Star Wars. I mean, or even Star Trek. It's still kind of an abstract idea in the Doctor Who universe because we're so used to just dealing with the Vortex. So anytime there's talk of hyperspace, it's a little bit different. And the idea that there are these creatures that extract a toll or kill an entire ship if you don't pay something is a little bit of a little too far-fetched of an idea for me.
I was totally okay with it, but totally okay with the moon being an egg. So that just was one more in a long line of okay, the Doctor Who universe tends to do these outlandish things, and I loved that setup. I loved they're doing the troll under the bridge. Okay, yeah, I'm on board with this. This is going to be great. And like Glenn, I was a little disappointed that we abandoned that story. Maybe it would have been a standard Doctor Who story.
Yeah,
because they kind of were setting it up for that.
Yeah, it would have suffered from that. You're right.
The so-and-so is going to be evil and this is going on. But you had the mystery of the revolving door of who this companion was that kept changing her name. And I also was confused for the first half of it until I kind of caught on to, okay, this is a Time War ripple. I see where you're going with this. And then the Daleks show up, and as the Daleks are wont to do, muck everything up.
Yeah.
And it kind of stamped it as this is a good start to the box set, is that we as with all things, we're going to go and have a nice holiday, and we're back there going, yeah, right, come
As
on.
always.
The writing's on the wall, Doc, you just can't see it. And then that adventure doesn't go the way that we thought it was, because this adventure is going to happen. But then this adventure doesn't go the way that we thought it was going to either, because the whole ship crashes. And so it was a continual series of pull the rug out from under you moments, which I thought was kind of clever, because it very much kept us off balance through the whole thing. It was like, okay, I'm kind of cool with this, because it was just different. Was it frustrating to listen to for those same reasons? Yeah, a little bit, because it was kind of like pick a lane, But I, in order for you to move the pieces around the chessboard and get to where you're going for the next part, okay, I'm going to allow it and see what happens. So
yeah.
It was a good open.
I did appreciate how they kind of turned it on its head when, first of all, we presume that they are sacrificing people in order to save money, basically, for this alternate route, and they're not telling anybody. And then when it switches and it becomes the refugee ship, and I think they're running from the Time War, and then we find out that now this time these people aren't being abducted and sacrificed, they're volunteers for this. And so I did like how they've kind of flipped that as they were changing, as the reality around them was changing as well. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think I would have been more frustrated by the whole thing if the Doctor wasn't confused as well. So I felt like I was lock and step with the Doctor, and even maybe a couple steps ahead. So that's why all the changes and constant shifting didn't really frustrate me when I was listening to it.
Right. If I'm
enjoy it a little bit more.
If I'm smarter than the Doctor, then it's a little frustrating because I got it before he did, and that shouldn't be the case.
That should never be the case.
Yeah, but when timelines are shifting, and I guess I just picked up on the clues well enough while listening to it that I understood kind of what the concept was happening as it was going. So I guess I didn't mind that.
Not to mention the Eighth Doctor sort of he's had the old noggin addled a few times, even in the things that we've listened to. So for him to be very confused when every time that his companion has a different name, that I suppose that I was a little forgiving of that because of which Doctor we were referring to.
Yeah. And I like the idea, both ideas, really, that they were able to work into this story of both the cruise line was a cool idea and very interesting, but then also these refugees escaping the Time War and choosing to sacrifice people, and the people that volunteered to be sacrificed in order to help get everybody to safety. I thought that both were very cool ideas that were well utilized within the same story together.
Yeah.
Do you think this was a Max Starliner?
Max Capricorn?
Man, thank you. I couldn't think of his last name.
We did get references to the faceless ones.
Yeah, that's true.
It can't be that bad.
All right, well, let's move on and talk about the next one, because I think I enjoyed it a little bit. Well, okay. Let's move on and talk about the next one.
Echoes of War. Colliding with the full force of the Time War, the Doctor crash lands on a jungle world with a ragtag band of refugees. To stay alive, they must cross a landscape where time itself is corrupted. A forest that cycles through growth and decay, where sounds of battle are never far away, and where strange creatures lurk all around. Luckily, the Doctor has friends. Not only plucky scientist Bliss, but another much more unlikely ally. Its name is Dal.
I liked this one a lot.
I did too. But it plots its own story out, and it becomes a little predictable. And by that I mean each step that they take, I sort of kind of felt like I saw coming through the whole thing all the way up until, because befriending a Dalek that arguably has lost its memory, and they're trying to convince it that they're friends because they need it basically to get to the location that they're trying to get to escape all of this reality changing around them. And so I liked it. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well done, but it did feel a little plotting, and it did really kind of feel like I knew what the next step was going to be or what was going to be coming next.
I can see that. The interminable march to its inevitable conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what makes it rise above is the march is very enjoyable. The characters are both interesting and enjoyable and frustrating all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of this Dalek not remembering and the moral question it poses of, if an evil person doesn't know they're evil, are they really evil? I mean, that's
Right.
kind of a cool exploration to explore. And then Bliss really gets to kind of stand up and shine on her own a little bit, and this is the story that makes me go, okay, Bliss is cool. I want her to stay around. So between all of those different things, I found it a really enjoyable ride, even though I knew where it was going.
Yeah, she definitely is a very strong companion.
Although I do have to say the absolute resolution, I did not think that would be what this overall solution was.
I guess I would agree with you. I think when we get to the end, I think I was caught a little off guard on how they ended this particular part of it. Now it makes sense for what they did in order to move us into the next story as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated the, as somebody who has spent a lot of, you'll pardon the expression, as somebody who has spent a lot of time writing time stories that deal with shifting pockets of time. I've always been fascinated by that. So maybe that's another reason why I really gravitated to this one and liked that you go through these areas of expansion and growth within the forest, and then everything withers and dies because of it. It's just its own little pocket sphere of accelerant. But then the civilization that's going through that within it at the same time, and how the monkey creatures are handling it, is both very cool and terrifying. What a just horrific weapon. And I liked the resolution that we get with them, that that these are not monsters, that they're actually trying to help. That's another very, okay, that's a very Doctor Who thing. I like this. And then the Time Lords show up. And wow.
And they haven't even deployed the weapon yet that has done this. That's the part that I was like, yes, that's cool.
Yeah, we get a little bootstrap paradox thing going on. And then the Time Lords become those Time Lords. And it's like, okay. Way to screw it up for everybody, guys. Oh, wow, you're not just going to nuke the planet. You're going to nuke the existence of everything in the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So that was that was a thing. And yeah, the resolution with Dahl, it was a little heartbreaking, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have had the opportunity to explore that character a bit more. And there's a fine line to be walked there. Not to draw yet another Star Trek parallel, but I always remember the next gen episode I, Borg, where they find a lone Borg drone that has been cut off from the collective and develops a personality.
Mm-hmm.
And it humanizes it. And the reviews have always been, this is a great individual episode to explore the humanity of a Borg. The problem is the Borg don't need a human face. The Borg are at their best when they are scary, relentless, this quite literally nameless, faceless villain that's just this relentless onslaught coming at you that you have to overcome. And that's kind of the way the Daleks are. That the minute you humanize one, the minute you can make a pet out of it, the minute you develop sympathy for it, you do some very interesting things there. But does that then suddenly harm the collective in general? Because, well, now there's the opportunity for this to be a thing. even
I
if
don't
it's
know
a
if it
rare
really
case.
does. It may let it be a thing, but I don't think it harms the collective in the fact that, there have to be very specific circumstances to allow this to happen. And considering how many Daleks there are, it's not like it can happen to all of them. So
Yeah.
I don't. Well, there's a good parallel there with the Iborg storyline. I don't. I guess the situations for the changes are different enough that I don't know if it could translate to everybody, like maybe could for the Borg.
Yeah, and the Borg are a little bit of a different animal anyway, because they're rather emotionless, whereas the Daleks are not.
Yeah,
they like to play that they aren't, but no, they're little hate-filled balls of rage that go quite mad all the time. So it's not the same, but I still would have liked a little more exploration with Dahl. I think Dahl is kind of a, you could have a whole box set of your own, buddy, just to see where this could go. But then the next story comes along.
I had to cheer. I did cheer a little bit when Alystra showed up, but that's more because of all the War Doctor stories.
I was going to say
and how great she is.
Exactly. It was refreshing to see her or to hear her as an actress in a performance. I don't know that I was all that excited that it was Alystra because of who she is and how manipulative she is, but
the actress who plays her, and yeah, I think that's the way you said it's good.
Oh, I mean, Doctor Who royalty there.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the conscript?
Sure.
Cardinal Alystra has a new tactic to persuade the Doctor to join his people's fight. With his friends locked away, he has been conscripted alongside fellow Gallifreyans to train for the front lines of battle. Commandant Harlan has a reputation. His camp's regime is harsh. He believes the Time Lords must adapt to win this war, but the Doctor is not easily intimidated. Can there be any place for dissidents for dissents when the Time War looms so close?
Yeah. This one was a bit dull. I didn't hate it. I think the things that stuck out that I didn't like about it was the military boot camp aspect of it was very much mirrored Earth too much, down to the cadence, down to the disciplines, down to the the results that they, if somebody steps out of line, it just mirrored the American Army or maybe even the Royal Army too much. And so it kind of felt a little bit forced and hokey at times, because I felt like they were trying to, I think it was Matt Fitton wrote this one. I think he was trying to make it relatable to the listener, but I think it goes too far. And I think that he could have got a little more creative on how this, brigade or squadron or platoon or whatever is structured. I think it could have been structured differently than just taking, Full Metal Jacket or Platoon and translating it into a Gallifreyan training squad.
Yeah, and when it does get really interesting is when they're like on that almost final training mission where they're actually doing kind of time-related stuff, and they just kind of gloss over the time-related stuff they're training on. Yeah. It's like, oh, come on, give me more of that training mission of what they're supposed to be doing. That would be fascinating. But instead it's, things kind of fall apart and the guy's not very good at it. And could have been a lot cooler of a story had they actually been more creative. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. The idea of sticking the Doctor in the military is like, let's do Private Benjamin. It's like, okay, there's some humorous potential to be had here, because this is very much a round peg square hole.
Yeah.
But there are so many problems with this, starting with the logic behind it, because I refuse to believe that a race as advanced as the Time Lords, despite all the dumb things they do, is actually wasting resources and personnel in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the breadth and scope of the Time War and the weapons that have been developed to fight it, you are actually training first of all, you're conscripting citizens and putting them in barracks and going through boot camp and enlisting shock troops. You've got Time Lord Marines to go out on the front lines against Daleks. The whole list of things wrong with that thought process. I mean, I could write chapter and verse. I could write books on what's wrong with that thought process. That's not going to work. That's not how you fight a war with this. In the words of Ripley, I say we take off and nuke them from orbit. It's just that you can't go mano a mano with a Dalek. I don't care what. I mean, maybe in a mech suit or something, but we didn't get that. It's the guy in kind of sort of an armor, stormtrooper outfit with a gun. So there's that element to it. Then there's, as Glenn pointed out, the so close similarities to the Earth training, which I refuse to believe that Gallifrey is that regimented in that. This would have been a very interesting had the Doctor been confused for a human, and this was an Earth-based story in an Earth-based army that he was stuck in. Okay, then maybe we've got something where he got conscripted by accident and nobody knew he was an alien. Then he's forced to go through the motions and winds up in the hole like the Cooler King. Okay, I could see that being a thing. Or maybe he and the brig are going at it, and he says, well, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in my world. Well, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in mine. And they agree to, kind of try it out. So he goes through basic training to see what it's like.
Quit giving up really great ideas for stories that you should be writing.
You get my point. There's so many other ways that this story could have been told other than a Time War setting. That
most of the time I'm lawyering us out of a lot of the things you say. This time I'm lawyering us into this one. I'm going to say right now, these ideas are copyright Traveling the Vortex 2022. Sorry.
No, but yeah, and then as Keith pointed out, so we finally, after we get through all of the rigmarole of the,
even down to a food fight.
Yeah, we're going to go through the barracks and we're going to go through the isolation and putting him in the hole and the standard stuff. And then we get to the cool bit. Oh, there's time jumps and there's this. Okay, this will be cool.
Orienteering.
Yeah. I kind of like that. That cool. That was neat.
Not enough of it.
No, exactly. But that's what Keith's argument was.
And then again, the Time Lords being dumb. So the beginning of the story sets off this grand plan about we want the Doctor in there till he breaks, and we're going to use his friends as leverage, and we're going to he's got to be and he doesn't, because of course he won't. He's not going to break. He's not going to be a cog in your wheel. Anybody who has ever met the Doctor, and Illustra especially, ought to know better.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. But they make it seem like there's this grand behind the curtain plan for the reason they're doing this. And then you get to the end of the story and it's like, oh, well, that didn't work.
Well,
what we learned
there is more motive behind this that we learn in the next story.
Yeah, the idea, I don't think they ever truly expected the Doctor to buy into everything. They were going to try.
Ultimately, the Doctor's involvement in this was completely immaterial.
Yeah, well,
None of it mattered.
Well,
they just needed him out of the way.
Exactly, it was a distraction. That's exactly what it was. It was to get him out of the way while they were trying to unravel what they were trying to unravel in with the others in the next story.
So it very easily could have been, let the Doctor take them home and then pick them all up a minute after he leaves. He would have never known. There's so many. You guys have time machines. You are, and I hesitate to point this out to you, but it is in your name, the Lords of Time. surely you got a whole room full of people at the CIA thinking stuff up like this.
But that's just it. You can't give them too much credit, because look at the arrogance of them thinking that they were well protected on this training base. And of course, now the commandant, he knew better, and he suspected that they weren't as protected as the hierarchy felt that they were. But
we have sky trenches.
Yeah, right. So I mean, if you just turn to that for how ignorant they are in running this kind of war.
Well,
honestly,
they do basic training like this. Yeah.
If this is an example of how the Time Lords ran the war, I'm kind of shocked that it went on as long as it did, and that it took the Daleks as long as it did to, I'm shocked that it was a stalemate for as long as it was, and that the Daleks took as long as they did to wipe them out.
Right.
Quite literally, because this is like, Custer level of ineptitude. I mean, pick a guy who failed miserably. I'm struggling to come up with a name, but pick that guy and go, yeah, this is you right now. This is how bad you have messed up. It's just that element of it was very frustrating. It's like I wish we'd gotten. I don't know. There's so many different ways you could have told this story and made it work without the Time War setting. And even if you're going to do the Time War, it's like, okay, but I can't wrap my brain around this is how they're fighting this war. I refuse to accept that. But yet that's what we were given. So it's like, okay. I
mean,
so that was the big stumbling block that I had.
We do know that they are fighting it on the ground occasionally based off of Day of the Doctor. I mean, we see the scenes while they're walking through Gallifrey. Of course, they're walking through Gallifrey once it's been invaded. But I mean,
well, and that to me has always felt more like that was the last resort. That was if you're going street to street action, it's because everything else has failed, or because your battle TARDIS crashed, or because you're on Gallifrey and you're trying to push them out of the city sector where the civilians are at. You know what I mean? I mean, there had to have been a logical reason for that action to have happened versus, nope, we're just going to land and push them off the beachhead. And it's like, why? Just so many better ways to do this. But yeah, I was kind of at a loss with this one. And Matt Fitton is normally, we've listened to several audios from this guy, and he's normally a pretty solid, reliable. He's one of those that I see his name on the cover and I go, oh, goody, because I know that I'm in for a good time. And again, Paul McGann's wonderful. He makes just about anything palatable. If not,
he does lift it up.
And he does. He has those moments like the food fight, like the constant headbutting with the commandant and Illustra. He makes those pieces of the story that do work really work, and the stuff that doesn't work, he even manages to elevate up into a I'm right there with you. This is dumb.
Yeah.
But there's just so much dumb that it was like, oh, I don't know if I can. I don't know, man. It was so frustrating.
All right, let's finish up with the next one.
One Life. As the full force of the Time War crashes down around the Doctor and his friends, a desperate battle for survival ensues. But not everyone is playing the same game. Illustra is after a weapon that could end the war in a stroke, and she'll sacrifice anyone or anything to take it back to Gallifrey, even the Doctor. Surrounded by Daleks and on a tortured planet, only one man can save the day, but he doesn't want to fight.
Bum, bum, bum.
As much as I enjoyed the ride, I'm a little frustrated that it all comes down to they were after a weapon. The entire box set.
Did anybody suspect that one of the people was the weapon?
Kind of once we started this story, I did.
I think,
but before that, I didn't really know what they were looking for before that, though. So.
Well, Yeah, I guess that's well. No, I thought that was mentioned in one of the cutaways in the last one, where when they were talking. Well, did we get that then, or maybe it was later? I don't remember. Anyway, maybe it was at the beginning of this one. But yeah, there at some point when they started talking about looking for this weapon, I kind of wondered if it was one of the people, especially since we kind of got this group thrown at us from the beginning. And so I sort of wondered if maybe somebody in this group, and I think what I liked about this one was the way that it was constructed between the couple, and I completely forgot their names now, but how they
and Quarren.
Yeah, they construct it where they go back through sort of their courtship and togetherness, marriage, whatever. I liked how we kept stepping back and kind of revealing things that really weren't true. It was things that he had inadvertently planted in both of their minds, and so that was kind of neat. I thought that was a cool idea. But yeah, I was a little let down that it all boiled down to the fact that they were just. In fact, it's revealed that that's kind of why they had sidelined the doctor in this platoon, because this was what they were trying to get at. They were trying to find out, who knew more about this. Now, I don't think they at the time knew that he was the weapon, because I think it's the doctor that sort of figures that out later. But I think they think he knows about it or knows where it is, or they thinks they know where it is. And so ultimately that we're let in on why the doctor's sidelined at this point. Not directly, but indirectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. I liked the adventure part of this. I liked the the Daleks crashing the base and escaping, and more of the moral implications with the Doctor and Lister arguing over why did you leave guards behind. And it's like, well, that was their duty, and while everybody else gets in the TARDIS and flies off. And I kind of liked the idea that the ship is still damaged enough that, well, we can fly through space but not time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a new one,
Yeah.
I don't know that we've really had that before. And some very nifty Dalek mechanics with whatever the ship is everywhere, and therefore nowhere. Okay, cool. I don't know that I understand it, but okay, I'll roll with it. Why not? So all of that was great. But then when we boil it down to, and again, I'm with you, Glenn. I liked the structure of the story of piecing together their relationship. But once we boil it down to the very kind of simplistic, we borrowed this idea from Armageddon Factor that the Queen is a fragment of the key to time, that he's the weapon and has been, that he just had decided not to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay. And
I do like the fact that he's not a manufactured weapon, that he is this genetic kind of anomaly to Time Lords of isn't such in touch with the vortex and time itself that he could do this just almost naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I appreciated that aspect of it.
Well, what was it? They said with just a slight adjustment, it could alter reality with his mind.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they'd have to modify him a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, so much of the story itself doesn't really matter, and I don't really remember a lot of it. And I just listened to it not that long ago of what the adventure was. All I really remember, what sticks in my head is him being the weapon, and how kind of him struggling with that idea of it.
And I guess that kind of goes back to, once again, kind of the false pretenses of that, because if you had this genetic anomaly that was born with this ability, wow, I don't know that the Time Lords, being the Time Lords, would have. I don't know that they would have gone the weapon route with it. Obviously, the temptation is there to go, oh, well, we could use it for this. But at the same time, the fact that he can or could change reality to suit whatever whim he came up with is a terrifying prospect that all you had to do was piss him off.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that he could unmake your entire civilization. And I think the Time Lords, being the Time Lords, would, if anything, not so much a weapon to be used, but would consider him more a threat to the established order, and probably would have offed him and not allowed him to, if he had escaped and gone off, this manhunt would have been ongoing long before the Time War was a thing. This would have been every resource, every security squad, every CIA operative, we're calling out the whole ball of wax to find this guy. We cannot let this thing loose in the universe. So something that powerful, just roaming around on his own, that's another thing that is kind of there's a fault in the storytelling there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, although I think we've established the arrogance of the Time Lords in their believing that they can control anything and have a good handle in this war. I sort of think they would attempt to use him as a weapon before somebody realized that, he's also a threat to us. Probably would have at least tried to manipulate him to do their bidding and then off him, knowing that, he's certainly too powerful to keep around. So
yeah,
I sort of agree, but I think they would have at least tried to utilize his quote unquote talents in some way before deciding, okay, well, now we've used you, now we have to kill you.
Yeah, the Time Lords are anything if not short-sighted, which again, for a race that has the ability to see time, man. Not very good at it, are they?
And then I think the story kind of divulges into I don't want to call it a cheat, and I don't even want to call it lazy writing, but it was almost get off too easy, because once he brings back the realization of who he is and what he is, and then all he has to do is kind of fix things with his mind and make people forget. And so it's kind of wrapped up too nicely in that way. For me, anyway.
Yeah, and it is a little sad that he decides that how he does that is by making it so he never existed in the first place. Because as a character throughout the box set, I liked him. He was an enjoyable, even though he was the one character in episode 2 that was the one that was kind of frustrating. Of why are you being such a kind of jerk about bringing this Dalek along, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the voice of reason that was needed.
Right.
Yeah.
You needed somebody to be voicing those objections, even if he was a little strong-willed about it. You had to have a Shane.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
As a Walking Dead reference for those of you that didn't catch it. But the problem I have with, you get to an all-powerful moment like this, and then they just go, okay, I'll fix it. But they always fix it in such a way that it doesn't really fix things.
Mm-hmm.
So he fixed it. And how did he fix it? Well, he fixed it so that the Doctor's alive and that he no longer exists. But we still lost all these people in the course of this adventure. We didn't, the planet still blew up. The Time Lord still went through all this rigmarole. The guards are still dead. The Daleks still... I mean, you could have taken care of all that on your way out.
Didn't the planet de-evolve?
Yeah. De-evolved into nothing. So I guess it didn't blow up.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I was just being pedantic.
It was never a planet to begin with.
Yeah, right. There you go.
But just you could have fixed all this on your way out the door, and you chose not to, because it's beneath you, because you're a god and you can't be bothered with it, because you didn't think of it for whatever reason. It was just we got a happy ending for the one character that ostensibly the audience cares about.
Right.
And
but we don't really know why it's a happy ending, though.
Yeah, and that just kind of goes back to these kinds of stories don't work for this reason. Because nobody wants to do the post story wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think overall, it's a pretty middling story, which is kind of sad. I mean, because it has some highlights, it has some detriments, but it's kind of a sad state for we're starting off Paul McGann's, or the Eighth Doctor's limited involvement in the Time War, and I think it's also a little misleading that we're getting box sets with the Eighth Doctor called the Time War when it was really heavily implied for the longest time that he tried to distance himself from the war. And so I'm interested to see where they're going, where they skirt this edge of him consistently trying to avoid it. But this start, I don't think was its strongest start. And so I'm kind of hoping that this series gets better as we go along.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry, Keith, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, it's kind of calling it the Time War is a bit misleading because it almost makes it sound like he's going to be involved with it when, while he is, he's still trying his best not to and, still doing his helping thing. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird line they're trying to walk, and this box set, I don't think it walks it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Time War Aftershocks, Time War Fallout, Time War. There's any number of things you could have called it other than just the Time War.
Right.
Avoiding Time War.
Avoiding the Time War.
Time War avoidance.
Not quite the Time War. Before the Time War.
Girding the Time War.
Time War side trip.
Circling the Time War.
Oh, that's good. That was good.
But yeah, no, like I said, there's some ups and downs to the story. I think overall there's probably a few more ups. It's let down by its basic premise and structure, but the moments that work within it are very cool. And of course, Paul McGann.
Yeah,
I continue to come back to that he could read a phone book and he would find a way to make it entertaining enough to listen to.
He certainly carries this entire box set as far as performance goes, and Alyster as well.
And Bliss continues to be good in this, and even the final story too. So
yeah,
I'm glad that it looks like she's going to stick around.
Yeah, she is a very promising character too. All right, well, Sean,
we'll see where they go.
Sean, what do we got coming up on the shit? Well, speaking of seeing where they're going to go, what's coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up on the schedule is Time War 2, Electric Boogaloo. That's not really the title of the box set. It's just Time War 2.
Really?
But one day. But one day. I don't know. I suppose if we could do Circling the Time War, we could do Electric Boogaloo for the second one. And then it'll, I think, come as a surprise to no one that the follow-up is Time War 3. And then Time War 4.
What is this craziness?
Sequential? What?
You get a whole bunch of Paul McGann in order, in a row, all dealing with potentially the Time War. Hopefully there's more dealing with the Time War than the War Master sets dealt with the Time War.
Right.
Considering it's Act 2, it better.
I mean, I suppose we can give it that. So far, there was far more Time War in this Time War set than there was in the War Master sets.
Fair enough.
That's true.
Yeah. There were at least Daleks in this.
Right.
And then, sorry. We round out phase 2 with some classic Doctor's New Monsters and a Diary of Ripper Song. All of that is yet to come. Also, want to shout out a plug because by the time you listen for this, it will be available. The Temporal Logbook.
3.
I don't have an Electric Boogaloo for that one. Yours truly was fortunate enough to have a short story selected for publication in this wonderful anthology. I'm assuming it's wonderful. I've not had a chance to read it yet, so I'm just going to say it's wonderful. anthology of Doctor Who stories. There is one from each Doctor's era, and they've been lovingly collected into a collection themed Changed Lives. So it's all about how lives have been altered and changed by the Doctor's influence, and in some cases made better, in some cases wrecked horribly, I'm sure. But the book from our friends over at Pencil Tip Publishing is available October 6th. So by the time this comes out, it will be available for sale. And all proceeds go to charity. So reach deep into your pockets and purchase and go help out a good cause.
And certainly I think here we're probably going to take a break from the Time War, at least for one episode, in order to give our opinions and our reviews on it as well. So
I would like to.
Watch for that. All right. Well, you can keep up to date with our with what's happening on our website, travelingvortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link on our website and consider supporting us there. And thank you to those who already are. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast, and make sure that you join in the conversation in our listeners forum on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at Travel Vortex. So if you want to give us a shout out on there, feel free. Hopefully we'll respond. All right. Anything else we need to do before we close this one out? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you. Thanks for listening.
Got a 2 for this week.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.